When we brought in BYOD, it was a system change. It was a cultural change. It was big. We had a school and some very established teachers and very good teachers who thought that I was off my rocker. Then we talked to the students. We said, students, we're thinking of doing this. Of course, a big cheer went out. They went nuts.
If you want to think of it in terms of the Titanic, we've managed to turn that boat 180 degrees, and it has been a huge transformation for us.
There's a time and place for Twitter. There's a time and place for YouTube. There's a time and place for all these different things. What we're bringing it in for is for your learning. As some teachers say to me is, if you do leave and we're asked to change, then there will be a revolt.
Andreas, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. Welcome to William G. Davis.
Thank you. Show me around the school,
Sure.
then we'll delve into what you're doing.
Come on in.
Thank you very much.
So I've been here 3 years now. When I arrived, we were a grade 7-8 school. And when I arrived, all teachers were teaching subject-specific items. So what I mean by that is teachers were teaching just science. Teachers were just teaching language. Teachers were friendly with each other, but if you taught science, you may not have talked to the language arts people. If you taught math, you may have talked to the science people, but you may not have talked to the phys ed teacher either. You know, there was conversations about drugs. There were conversations about weapons. There were conversations all about that. Students weren't engaged in class. They didn't want to go to class. They didn't want to go to just science. They didn't want to go just to language. By taking a step out and looking in, they needed more attention. They needed role models that they could connect with. And so the only role models that we could think of were ourselves. So we had to give more time for students to be with teachers. And so how do we make sure that all students are getting what they need when they need it? And so we came up with the idea of let's teach everything.
Teachers teaching all subjects as opposed to being experts in one or two subjects. My initial concerns were that the students wouldn't be getting the quality of material that they might otherwise have the opportunity to receive.
So the question was, how are we going to make it work? At first, I think it was more like ripping a Band-Aid off, but after that, it was healing time and giving time for teachers to come up with their own style of it and saying, if I'm going to be doing this, then I need to speak to you because I know you're the math expert. You can help me with my math. And I know you're the language expert. You can help me with my language. So you started seeing teachers starting to team up with teachers, and that's when it started turning.
We talked about some of the activities that we could use to teach probability and also how we could integrate it with other subject areas. And we talked about language being a good fit.
So the journey began really there. When I walked through the door, observed. Obviously when you come into a new place, you don't just go right away and go right into the change process. You have to learn the culture first before you do something with it. When I began here, we had computer labs. We had one lab upstairs on the 3rd floor. So it was functional. Kids had access to technology once every 2-3 weeks. To work on a project.
Up until 2 years ago, April, we would have been doing what lots of other school boards were doing. We were very focused on our board improvement plan, looking at how we could close the gap, primarily technology in the hands of teachers and only very limited student use. And then 3 things happened. The first thing was that Jennifer Jensen wrote the report for the ministry, which we all read and became aware of. We then went to the UPSOA conference and listened to Chris Kennedy from BC and then Will Richardson. And then after that conference, I think it was an aha moment for us as a superintendent group. We put together a team of 11 principals and sent them to Vancouver for 4 days to visit schools and to find out what they did, how they did it, and how they developed their 21st century vision.
And what it was about was bring your own device. And
this was a conference you went to?
It was actually visiting Chris Kennedy in West Vancouver and touring the schools and getting time to sit down with their principals and Chris himself and talk about what have you seen with the change, what are some of the pitfalls if you do decide to implement it, and what are some of the benefits of implementing it.
Simultaneously to that, the director's office was also getting very excited about what they were hearing and approached our trustees about really supporting a move towards 21st century teaching and learning, and also Peel becoming a board that supported Bring Your Own Device, BYOD. The trustees agreed to commit $7 million of our reserves to put wireless in every school. and it has really gained momentum from there.
When we had Will Richardson come up to kind of kick off our initiative, at the end our director thanked him and then kind of did the big reveal that we're going to BYOD, we're going to give you the tools that you and your students need to be successful, and there was a spontaneous standing ovation.
The frustration was, why do students have to wait until they're done university? Why can't we just start now?
Right.
With the tools, and technology gives you those tools to just start now.
Students can bring in their own technology, whatever that is, and they can hook up into our Wi-Fi for their learning in the classroom. Through the change that we did with teaching everything, teachers were already in the change process, and they were dealing with it by working together.
I looked at that one, and some kids may get it, others may not, but he does have a seamless way of delivering it.
When the technology first came in, I was excited, but also had a lot of concerns. The idea of technology being used improperly, wasted time, bullying, texting.
The teachers all came together and said, okay, these are our concerns. And we researched other districts doing the same work with BYOD, bring your own device. And what we quickly found out was there's no perfect policy out there. So we simplified ours to a very simple level, tech on, tech off. If a teacher asks you for tech on, you turn it on. If it's tech off, you turn it off. I gave every teacher an iPad and said, here's an iPad, go use it.
I also found a little app.
Teachers started sharing apps that they were using to help build their programs. And you saw meetings starting to occur outside of the office. Once the change was brought with the Teach Everything and then the iPads came in, you started hearing the laughter. You started seeing teachers say, oh yeah, I'm doing this. This is really cool. You got to try this. And so it was all about technology. But what it quickly shifted to was, how are we teaching them? Like all of a sudden, students are bringing in these own devices and they have something called Google. And all the answers in the world are on Google. So what am I doing in the front of the classroom?